Hello people, here I am back with the third part of this series. Today I will be delving into the second Life is Strange game. This one focuses on Sean and Daniel Diaz, two brothers who live a relatively normal life in Seattle with their father, until a life-changing incident occurs which leads them to go on a nationwide road trip in an attempt to evade the police and those chasing after them. The end goal is to skip to their father's hometown in Mexico. We navigate through this road trip on an episode-by-episode basis as Sean, who is 7 years older than Daniel, and has to act as a father figure towards him, despite only being 16 years old himself. Another minor detail which I may have forgotten to include is the fact that Daniel also has telekinesis powers, which are quite important to the story, I guess. But again, we'll get to that later. This is the third part of a fourth-part series on my Life is Strange tier list videos. Once again, before we get into this next episode, I recommend you play this game, because I'll be spoiling the whole thing. Also, you may be mistaken thinking this is just a Life is Strange 2 tier list, because there is a surprise we have at the start. Now anyways, let me get into the ranking of these episodes. Captain Spirit. I'm including everything in this series, so let's get into Captain Spirit, which was released as a sort of demo for the second game, and introduces us to the world and mechanics, which have changed since the first game. This was my first playthrough, so it was interesting to play this. It's the last thing that I hadn't played through in the whole Life is Strange universe. The transition from the menu here to the game is very nice and clean. In Captain Spirit, we play as a 9-year-old called Chris Erickson on a Saturday morning. This morning involves us being part of his adventures as his own imaginary superhero. This is quite a wholesome story, but it is undercut by some other factors that I'll get into as we have more info about the episode. In the morning we realised that, oh my god guys, he might have powers. I'm sure he does. This will be developed in the second game, obviously. You'll see when I come to it. His dad does seem quite abusive, which isn't very good. He's also drinking at god knows what time in the morning. Obviously the mother ain't here for a reason we'll get into later. We also can gather that his arm got beaten by his father from a conversation between them. So yeah, it's some pretty dark undertones, despite it being a pretty wholesome game, playing as a 9-year-old on the surface of it. I do like the reference to the second game in the newspaper here. I get this game's demo's intention of sort of giving us tiny, minor details about the second game. I didn't play at the time though, so I don't know how people reacted to this at the time. But the long story short is, maybe this shooting in Seattle in the newspaper will have something to do with us soon. I don't know though. There's another reference on this laptop here to some characters. I wonder if these characters will also have something to do with the next game. I sure hope we don't end up on some illegal farm in California in a certain episode of them. Another thing I noted when playing through this is there is a Jefferson art book on a desk or something, or on a counter. That's quite alarming given what we know he did. I doubt this household knows what he did though. I don't know, maybe it was nationwide news. Another thing to note is that we can see that we are getting a console if we get into our father's room, so we sort of spoiled Christmas for ourselves. But we won't be here for it, so who cares? We also can get aired by our father later in the episode as he is watching basketball. He did promise us to go out and get a tree for him later for Christmas, but something tells me he might not want to do this after he's had too many drinks. We can also learn that his mother went to Blackwell. This game is more of just like an exploration thing, and it's fine for that. I like the little nods it makes to things that have happened in the Life is Strange universe, both now in the second game, but also in the first one. We also learn his mother died in a hit and run. This developer loves making tragic characters who lose parents. I sure hope the same won't happen in the second game. This game, Captain Spirit, is just going on weird superhero imagination things, which is fine for what it is. I mean, it would be natural for a 9-year-old to do stuff like this. I'm sure we all did similar stuff as children.
You sleeping?
Again, though, his dad is a raging alcoholic. When he gets woken up by Chris, he's stumbling all over the place, and he gets quite cross at Chris.
Dad, come on.
Huh? What? Who's there? Who's that?
Dad, it's just me, Chris.
Whoa, hold on, buddy, okay? Jesus.
Dad!
Fuck!
Dad, are you okay?
Do I look okay? No. I tripped. Can't even watch one goddamn game. Fuck! That's just great. Oh, I think I sprained my foot. Shit. Chris, why did you wake me up?
You told me to wake you up. I thought you said the pine tree.
Pine tree? I can't even walk in my own house, man.
You should be careful when you're, when you wake up.
Don't be a smartass, Chris. I'm not in the mood right now.
Yeah, Dad. Okay.
Then the neighbours knock.
Christ, who is that?
I'm not sure how they heard because the houses aren't connected, they're detached, so it's pretty impressive that the neighbours managed to hear all this commotion of Chris and his father, getting into a fight. Well, not getting into a fight, it's just child abuse.
It's our family, right?
It is nice that the neighbour is concerned, at least, though. Once again, I'm sure she won't be important in the next episode. His dad then gets into abuser mode after this conversation with the neighbour. He is grieving the loss of his partner, obviously, but that is not an excuse for child abuse. He also blames his own son for the death of his wife in the heat of the moment, which is not very good.
I swear. Dad, please believe me.
Jesus, stop that whining. You're not a baby anymore. Oh, boo-hoo, Daddy. Believe me. Grow up.
But
You're just like your mom. Every time I look at you, every time you talk,
Stop it.
I see your face. Why? And if it wasn't for you, she would have never taken the car that day. Never. Oh, hey, Chris, look, hey, I didn't mean that, buddy.
Yes. Yes, you did.
No, listen, Chris.
Then, as Chris runs out of the house, scared basically, he falls out of his treehouse, which we can explore earlier, and he's about to hit the ground quite hard, but then miraculously he is saved and stopped from falling without reason. Any reason explainable by science or anything, by some random kids next door. I'm sure they wouldn't be important in this video. And that ends Captain Spirit. It's quite a short demo. It's fine for what it is. Like, it's alright. I don't really care for it that much, but you don't need to treat it as a full episode thing. It shouldn't be treated as that. I will say it does well to encapsulate the Life is Strange feeling, particularly when compared to the first game. This is mainly when comparing it to themes like grief with lost parents, and also issues like neglect. Chris's imagination in this game is an escape from reality for him. Escaping from reality is a common theme with our Life is Strange characters so far, particularly Chloe, who used marijuana to escape reality a lot. Another key thing with the second game is the improved mechanics and graphics, but for the purpose of this video they aren't that important. But I still enjoy them though, and I think it is an upgrade in the first game. I'd probably put this in just C tier because I'm so neutral on it. It doesn't do anything bad really, but it's just a demo, so it's not designed to have the same impact as a full-out game. I'm only really including this out of necessity. Once that's done, we can move on to the second Life is Strange game. Episode 1, Roads. Now, before we start properly, I would just like to say that the main music is brilliant again in the menus. Also, this is only my second time playing through Life is Strange 2. This is unlike the first two games where I already played through twice before, so it was my third time, so I'm hoping before this will be more interesting for me. Anyways, here we go. We start off with some cop car driving about. The date is about a week before the 2016 election, which is interesting and definitely intentional given the themes of this game. This cop pulls over at some house, then there's a gunshot, the car gets launched, loads of backup comes, very alarming start to this game.
I'm gonna need backup. Copy that. All backup available. It's gonna be all right. On the ground.
This game does look better than the original versions of the first games as well, but I mentioned that in Captain Spirit. The scenery to start off here is lovely again, and boy, I sure can't wait to get into another high school drama with some superpowers. The song which plays in the beginning also helps to give us the sense that this is happening. It's very fitting to the type of high school teen drama. Would fit in the first game quite well, I think. Now, we get off this school bus, but we then try to use unspoken riz on someone called Jen. We are playing with Sean here at this point, obviously, but I mentioned at the start. Sean spends the beginning here speaking with his best friend Lila.
See you tonight.
The main thing we draw from this is the chemistry between these two. They really seem like best friends. The game makes it seem like this friendship has been together for years, which it has been.
Okay,
It also sets us up to be completely shocked in a few moments
No.
when this friendship turns out
I'm
to
sure
be
she'll
pretty
reply at some
irrelevant
Let me take a look at the situation.
for the rest of the game.
Hey Jen, you going to the party tonight? Dude, we talked about this. Could you have any less game?
I'm no good at this. Ooh, how about... Yo, Jen, see you at the party. Let me know if I should bring handcuffs.
Oh my god, you thirsty bitch. Here, let Lila the Love Witch work her magic.
Okay, just don't make me sound like a loser.
I said matchmaker, not miracle worker.
Hey, hold on. Let me check it before you send.
Too late.
Would be awesome to see you there. What? I could have texted that.
It's a good start. She'll text back, you'll see.
You know, I don't even know if I want to go tonight.
Oh, please. It's gonna be fun. You hate every party.
Oh, because they're all the...
First minor stupid
Man,
nitpick here.
We need to find a couch for
Lila
your
and
yard
Sean
one
mentioned
day.
a couch in the yard needing one, but they're sitting in front of chairs, like, could they not just sit there? I don't know. Maybe not.
So we
Lila
gotta
then
make an
tasks
official
us with
party
getting
list.
supplies for a party
Hey, whoa,
later,
what the hell
and I'm
is
sure
that?
these supplies we need to get
I'm
for
a
this
human
party
post-it
won't be
note.
needed for something else.
First,
I'm
we
also sure
need
some traumatic event
money
in a
for
moment won't stop us from being
supplies,
close friends, and this won't be the last time they talk to each other in person for a very long
chips,
time.
and dip.
Now,
Once we finish
Who
with Lila,
deserves
we come
to
home to our
eat
father
this
and brother, who are having an argument
Oh,
about who gets the last chocolate bar. I kind of feel you have to go to the young brother in this
who eats about
situation,
10
otherwise
bags
you
a
are a
week.
bit of a knob.
or your poor, suffering father who slaves over a hot engine to provide his family with a home and a garage.
Me. Come on, Judge.
Shh. Let him decide. Judge, the verdict, please. Daniel is innocent, and so the jury gives him the Choco Crisp.
Oh, yeah.
I also steal money from the family jar here, which is bad, but luckily I know the future and I know that this money will be
No
more
harm.
useful in my hands.
I'll pay.
In the fridge I then take the halal option for drinks,
This will work.
which is fitting because
don't wanna
Ramadan
get
is literally
wasted
about
in
to
front of
end as I
Jen.
record this.
What are you doing in there, Dr. Frankenstein?
Daniel is an interesting character here to say the least. We will get an opportunity to dive further into his character later on, but for now, I like him.
What's with the scissors?
Sean's family also seem pretty well off, especially given the fact that this is a single parent household. Esteban must be making bank. His dad is a really nice guy.
And see what you can learn.
You can get this by speaking to him in the garage. He just comes across very humble and he's very kind with Sean. They have a great relationship together in the really short time we see it. Anyways, I sure hope this relationship remains for a while.
Hold on, okay?
Spoiler alert, it doesn't.
What's going on outside?
We'll now move on to what happens. Now we get to the game's inciting event. We start off by Skyping Lila out of the party and just having a normal chat. We can see Sean being a bit of a prick to his brother here before this happens, which will become important later on, obviously. But then it gets interesting to say the least. His brother gets involved in an altercation with a neighbour outside, and Sean comes up to defend him, and you do have to defend your brother here. But then this leads to something quite bad. The neighbour also racially abuses Sean and Daniel, which, you know, again, big theme in this game. Then there's a fight.
He didn't mean it. He's a fucking kid. He's a fucking retard. What did you just say? You heard me, bitch. Don't ever touch him again. Or what? You gonna get your daddy? Hey, asshole. I don't need him to protect me from you. You wanna go? Oh yeah, motherfucker? Then go back to your own country.
Whoa. Sean, you hit him.
Get inside now.
Sean!
You're dead meat, bitch. You and your whole fucking family are going to jail, losers.
What's going on?
Sean sort of punches him and he hits a rock. I think he has like a seizure or something. Also, Daniel's put fake blood over him before this, so some cop comes along and sees some guy seizing on the floor with fake blood on him, and it paints a pretty bad picture. Sean and Daniel are both on the ground here, whilst this cop is pointing his gun at him. Then Esteban comes out to see what's going on. He obviously is pretty confused. He then approaches the cop, and the cop, well, panics, like a lot of police do, who just aren't adequate to be in this position. Then shoots their father right in front of him, and shoots him dead. This obviously shocks the boys, and Daniel screams, and then basically blows up the street, effectively. The cop car goes flying, the cop is dead, and I can't speak about how much this caught me off guard on my first playthrough. I was genuinely astounded watching this. Sean wakes up a moment later noticing the chaos, and he decides to just run away with his brother. I have a major issue with this, like a major issue, but we'll talk about this at a later point, because I understand the logic in him running away in this immediate moment. Regardless of this though, this is an absolutely killer opening. It's utterly brilliant. I loved it. I played this game a couple years after release, so I had no idea of the opening, and I was genuinely shocked when I played this for the first time. I really thought we would get something similar to the first game and there was a vibe here, but this was clearly not the case. Don't know had other ideas.
Come on. Daniel, come on. We gotta go. Now.
Where's Dad?
Once this traumatic event is over, it skips a few days as we are on the run with our brother. The forestry here in this next scene is lovely to look at. Daniel doesn't remember what happened and wants to go home, which is completely normal. We sort of like gaslight him about how we're going camping and Dad can't right now.
He can't.
In the forest, or surrounding it, they mention there are wolves for the first time. This is a massive theme of the whole game. Each episode will start of it, basically.
Yeah, that
I do like the dialogue between Sean and Daniel in this episode. I find it somewhat realistic. I can relate this quite heavily due to having a brother of an exact same age gap, pretty much. So, this game touches personally with me as well in that regard.
You don't whine too?
I don't whine.
Although my main issues with the game does start to arise here. Don't get me wrong, I get running away in the immediate aftermath. But to me, it is completely logical as to why Sean is continuing to run away. What reason is there to run away apart from being just scared in the immediate moment? I get the US justice system is not great, particularly towards minorities, but there is no feasible evidence to link you to blowing up a police car and killing the cop. Would an entire jury believe that a 16-year-old is capable of this explosion that happened back in Seattle when there will be no evidence tying him to it? No. I refuse to believe he will be charged based on that. The only thing you could get charged with was assaulting your neighbour, but I doubt the punishment on that is enough to make you do what you're about to do throughout these next 5 episodes. The main issue of this though is you're robbing Daniel of his childhood basically by dragging him on his whole adventure, but I'll mention that more later. Main thing to draw from that though is no jury would really charge Daniel with murder based on the evidence available to them. Whilst the brothers are speaking, their constant father references are just gut punches.
Do you think he's worried about
This is before Daniel knows the truth, obviously, so he's acting like he's all good, but he's not.
No.
This episode really hit emotionally on this playthrough, but that will become even more apparent later on.
Car out here?
Again, for the last time, I'm going to mention the game's improved graphics here, with the scenery near the river. I can't praise this enough, it's simply gorgeous. I'll just let the picture linger here for a bit. It's wonderful. This first night involves some cool personal moments here between the brothers. You can teach stuff to Daniel throughout the game, but it isn't that important towards the main plot of the game. I'm on about skipping stones here. You can teach him to do that, but it's not important, the choices. The relationship is really wholesome in this episode, which is pivotal to people liking this episode. This road trip format means that you need to really like the main protagonist for it to stick, as obviously these characters will be jumping in and out. We'll see some later. We fall asleep in the forest for this night, and then the next day we head to a petrol station. I really like the aspect of having to manage your budget in this game with buying food and stuff. I kind of wish they carried it on throughout the whole game. I do like the risk or reward decision here though in the store of whether or not to steal. I didn't because I wanted the high morality playthrough in this run. In the shop here we can meet Brody, and I have a feeling he'll come in big for us later.
This is a ton of food.
In this playthrough I did a good job of taking care of Daniel by ensuring he had enough food to eat. I'm a good brother. Once we're eating though, some guy in a truck approaches us, and then this random racist guy here just attacks us and our brother for no real reason. Yeah, he's pretty racist though. Look, I completely, by the way, 1,000,000% agree with the political messaging of this game. In fact, I'd probably go a bit further than the political messaging of this game, politics-wise. But the critique I have is it is a little bit too on the nose. Sometimes in a way that may potentially enable other forms of racism, or not bring as much attention to them at the very least. I'll get to this point later on, because there's a scene later where it becomes even more apparent of this. But just to let you know, I'm all for the messaging in this game. And if anything, to be honest, this game is more on point about its racism points now than it was back in 2018 when the game was released. If anything, it's gotten worse since then, you'd say. With especially mainstream politics and the type of viewpoints that are widely believed in mainstream US politics in particular. I mean, it's a US game, so I reference that. But again, though, anything to draw. I love the political messaging of this game, but I have some minor critiques. I'll get to that later, though. Spoiler alert, it's in episode 4. Once this racist beats us up, though, he then proceeds to lock us in a room whilst he calls the police. Presumably, he knows who we actually are. We do not know where our brother is in this sequence, but he does show up in a moment. And he helps us get out. There's quite a fun puzzle sequence here, where our brother helps us get out of the room by sending us the keys and also doing other stuff. We tell him what to do. His brother then gets back into the shop, but the racist guy spots us. Our brother then uses his powers, but not realising that he did, and this knocks the racist guy out without knowing what he did. You then get a choice whether to steal or not from this racist guy, and you should steal here, but I know the ending I want, so I didn't. And I will say it is so stupid that this game's morality system with your brother punishes you for stealing from this racist guy. I really disagree with that on a fundamental level. Sometimes you need to treat racists awfully because it's what they deserve. If anything, we don't treat him awfully enough by just stealing from him. Again, though, that's all I can really say about that. I just think it's stupid sometimes, some of the morality stuff in this game. Mainly that one, though, that's quite bad. Once we escape from this random racist shop, though, we find Brody in the woods, luckily, who's in his car, and he offers us a ride. How nice of him.
Shit!
Where are we going? Sean!
Watch out! Over there. Let's go.
I don't know.
Whoa, what are you doing out here, man? You almost scared the shit out of me.
You guys okay? Look,
That asshole at the gas station. It's fucking crazy.
Tied me up in his back office. I swear.
Dude, they ain't no more. I believe you.
hey. Shit's crazy out in the woods. Get in, you two. Hurry up before he catches us.
Come on, I'm not stupid.
I also forgot to mention that Daniel spotted a dog in this shop and wanted it, and we said no, but yeah, he stole the dog, by the way. Which honestly is quite funny. But I'm sure taking care of this dog as two brothers in a row will not end badly.
We saved her. We're heroes.
The dog is called Mushroom by Daniel, which is quite a cool name.
Yeah.
Brody is also spot on here in the car when we speak with him, and he says everything is political.
So
It
you're
is.
like all
Please try and keep involved with the news. I sound like such an idiot by saying that, but yeah, just everything is political. Well, the vast majority of things in life are. I love that atmosphere in the car with the rain and darkness.
That sounds
It's
cool.
really nice and
Don't you
it
ever get
encapsulates this
kinda
Life is Strange feeling.
lonely?
Then randomly we pull over a familiar place which may bring back some memories. It is quite gut-wrenching here seeing the destruction of Arcadia Bay by my choice. If you don't know, we are pulled up by a plaque next to Arcadia Bay where you can see, well, where Arcadia Bay was in mine. If you chose the other ending, you'd actually see Arcadia Bay here right now. Brody then pulls us up on what happened in Seattle and says that he know. We rightfully can blame the police for what happened in Seattle because obviously Sean and Daniel did nothing wrong. Some random cop
It's your call. No
who
pressure.
clearly wasn't fit for the position just shot their father cold-blooded murder
I don't even know
in the
what
middle of the
happened.
street.
It was so fast.
Brody says we will be alright though despite this because we have our brother
It was the
and that we
police.
need to be alright
It's
because
their
we're the
fault.
ones who have to provide
Daniel
for him
just
now.
wanted to play zombie outside. Or shit hit
Again though,
me.
this is
On him.
roughly again the moment where Sean should have just gone home by now.
Somebody called the
I just
cops
don't
and
think it's fair on
they
Daniel to
shot
carry
him.
on with an adventure like
They killed
this.
my dad
He
in
needs a
front of me.
childhood and he won't
Like
have that on the
something
run.
like that was
Well,
alive.
not an adequate one I'd say. Obviously involved with education and stuff and friends his own age. It's not Sean's fault obviously, he's rightfully scared of the repercussions which happens a lot to minorities in the US and just around the world.
Hey, it's gonna
You
be
would be
all
scared to go into the justice system like that. Especially when there are prejudices around you. But again, I'm not seeing how they could blame him for what happened, given the circumstances. In the conversations with Brody, we learn that Sean's mother is out of the picture.
Where are you going?
We also learn Sean wants to go to the Mexican town Puerto Lobos. Probably butchered that, whatever. As a means to escape. This was his father's town, which he grew up in. And his father had spoke about going back there one day.
Mexico, you know?
Damn. I
Once
thought
the
I was
conversation
one
with Brody is
traveler.
over, we tearfully depart Arcadia Bay, which is a great backdrop for this conversation with Brody. Max and Chloe, I really hope you're doing great out there in the world. Maybe we'll get a clue of how they're doing later on.
Listen, I'll
Also,
drop you by
yeah,
a
rip
hotel
all those that died in
in
the
a
storm,
couple
but
of
I
hours.
still stand by my decision.
You guys could use some time to yourselves.
Brody drops us off at a motel down south in
You guys
Oregon,
getting along?
and thankfully for us, he gets us a motel room. He might be the best person of all time.
I got
He
you that
really
room.
saved us out here.
Seriously?
He tells us to ditch the phone due to tracking.
Deal. Look,
Also tells us to tell the truth to Daniel, which is quite important, I believe.
and
Brody makes such a great impact on this story in such a short space of time.
now's
These
my
characters will
turn.
dip in and out of the story at points because it is a road
It's
trip.
right there.
Brody is an example of this when the road trip character is done great. They have a great impact on the story in the time allotted to them, and then they leave at an appropriate time to send us away on our next step of the journey.
Careful now. I know it's easier said than done, but you should get rid of that phone.
Really?
You can always get a burner later. Trust me. And Sean, talk to Daniel. He deserves to. Bro hug.
Wish you could stay with us.
Me too, kid. Sorry, I'll probably think of a better goodbye when I'm on the road, but until then, take care, my dudes.
I'm gonna miss him.
Me too.
We make it to the motel room. I love the view on the balcony here, looking out to sea.
Good.
Well, I guess it's actually an ocean, isn't it? I'm waffling. I do really like Daniel in this episode as well. It is a difficult job to get child characters right, so I have to give great credit to Don't Nod for doing that in this episode.
Can I get us this far?
Normally games can get child characters quite wrong and it makes it unbearable. Maybe Don't Nod will do it in later episodes though. We'll see.
How can we get there without...
We also finally check our phone in the motel after it being out of charge for a while. And Lila is texting us like crazy when we start using our phone. And Rightfully so, she's probably wondering what the hell's happened to her best friend and brother. We didn't get a choice to call Lila or not, and I think it is right to call her. She's obviously stricken with grief as a result of thinking she's lost her best friend.
Hey, Lila.
But again, I'll say again, this call, after this call, precise moment, Sean should have turned back, gone back to Seattle.
Are you okay?
I guess.
With this phone call, he's being reminded
I'm
of what he's losing by staying here.
I'm
Lila is literally in tears.
with Daniel.
Shit.
Losing Sean.
Everyone's looking for you here.
This is just compounded by the conversation with Brody as well. This really is a touching moment at this balcony,
about
and
you?
I really wish they used Lila more after this
Are you
point,
okay?
but that's pretty much it for her, nearly.
Everything's fucked up. I'm so worried about you. The cops are talking to everybody at school.
This is a nightmare. We're fucked.
Sean, don't say that. It will be okay. I miss you so much. Maybe you could come back.
You know I wish I could, but we can't take that risk. They're gonna put me in juvie. And Daniel,
Bullshit. You're innocent. And I've got your back. No matter what.
no way. I'm not gonna let you get in trouble for me.
Stop acting like I'm never gonna see you again. That's bullshit.
I'm sorry. I totally hate this. I guess the freaking fighters are disbanded for a while.
Shit actually changes, I guess. So, where are you going?
We're just going away for now. I'll call you if I get a chance. I miss you, Lila.
Sean, wait. What is this?
Sean tearfully, though, watches old Christmas videos and chucks away the phone, but Sean, man, I wish you just turned around at this point. But then we wouldn't have the rest of the game. It's just logically what I think should happen. We then go leave the motel room momentarily to get a drink for Daniel, and we say we're going to have a conversation with him when we get back. The conversation is obviously, about our father, but I mean, he beat us to it.
Daniel!
He does the cliche where he turns on the news and it's like
Daniel,
instantly
calm
on
down.
exactly what they were looking for, I guess, almost, or what the story was about. But yeah, he finds out that his father's dead. We can infer this by when the motel lights start flickering, which is usually a hallmark of Daniel's powers. We hear Daniel shout out for his dad, and then he starts making the room basically levitate. This moment really hurts, it really cut me deep. We tried to tell Daniel that we only hid the truth from him because we were scared, and this really hits for me. I was tearing up playing this. I didn't expect it to make such a strong impact on me. It's just brilliant.
Daniel. I didn't know what to say.
You should have told me.
I couldn't believe it either. I didn't mean to.
It's not fair.
Hey, come on. I'm here. It's okay.
No, it's not. I want Dad.
Me too.
You told me we were gonna see Dad.
I'm sorry. I just...
Just don't lie to me ever again. Ever.
I promise I won't lie to you again. I promise.
I'm serious, Sean.
I know. Me too, Danny.
What are we gonna do without him?
Shh. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Anyway, that ends the moments in the motel for us, and
Am I
When we're on the bus the next day, Daniel doesn't seem to realise his powers, and he
Nothing's wrong
questions
with you.
Sean about them.
You're
Sean tells Daniel
different.
the wolf story, which becomes a big premise for this game for the rest of it.
Wild.
This is how we leave the brothers at the end of the first episode, on a bus, and actually quite hopeful in a way, how they're going to live their journey out for the rest of these episodes. This episode was absolutely killer, man. It really hit me emotionally, much more than I remembered. I said in the last part that the last scene of the bonus episode was the only thing that made me tear up in this universe, but I lied. The motel scene between the brothers also did. I love how this game started off, and how it somehow managed to keep the Life is Strange vibe whilst going in a completely different way. The opening and ending of this particular episode are all killer, and the middle part sort of gives us that slow Life is Strange vibe where we are just in the moment and enjoying the scenery, what's around us. This episode is also extremely long. It took me nearly 4 hours to get through, so you are getting your money's worth with this game. All the episodes are pretty long, honestly. Maybe a bit longer than the first game, but the 4th episode of the first game, that was really long. I also need to just compound this a final time that the shock for Esteban getting shot was incredible on first playthrough. But honestly, just writing this made me realise how similar this game's inciting event is with the first. The only difference is you can't rewind time in this game to prevent it from happening. For this episode, I'm feeling a very strong A tier. It nearly got an S, but I still think I would rather play the other 3 episodes in S tier when compared to this one. Who knows though, many of the final parts of my rankings may have changed, but honestly, this episode is probably exceeding my expectations the most after playing it the second time of any episode of any game up to this point. This episode took me aback about how good it was. I completely forgot it was this good. But let's see if the second episode can live up to that. Episode 2, Rules. We start off with the wolf story, which references the last episode's events, which I think is a quite cool way to do this. This carries on throughout every episode from here on out, and this episode also starts off about a month after the events that set off this whole adventure. The episode properly begins with us watching Daniel practicing using his powers by a river after the reveal last episode that he knew of his powers. We are currently surrounded in the snow, which is a change of scenery from last episode. I should mention once again that the scenery is stunning throughout this game, and the forest here is a highlight of that. We go over rules about Daniel's power of him, and it basically boils down to us saying to him to not say to anyone about his powers. I just realised I explained that in a really stupid way, but you get it. This game sparks a constant debate about the use of Daniel's powers, and for some reason I think Daniel might not listen to us though about him using his power. Daniel says if he used his power maybe his dad would still be here, but I mean you technically did use your power. You know, blew up the cop car. Also I'm like 99% sure that his dad getting shot triggered the power inside of him, so he couldn't have saved him in any way anyway.
Daniel,
it is also interesting to wonder what causes these powers. There was a similar inciting event for Max when she discovered her powers, but the next game kind of ruins this link for the inciting power because, well, you'll see then. I'll tell you about the powers when we get to the next part of this series.
Hey, we have no clue what happened, and it's not your fault.
Daniel is also fairly sick right now at this moment, which we should probably do something about that. We discover that when we get back to this house which we've been hiding out in for a while. Obviously we got there off screen though.
She must be hungry. What about you?
Now I don't mind the opening thing here with the conversation between the brothers, but we kind of did this last episode already in the forest.
I'll make us some dinner.
The only difference now though is that we know of Daniel's powers and it's all out in the open what he did. He knows. Later on in the house, we discuss leaving the house in the middle of the woods to go to our grandparents who live relatively close. This is due to us needing assistance with stuff like medicine and stuff. And this is a sound plan, but I do have a nitpick for this when we get here. How is their grandparents' house not being constantly surveilled? Like, we make it there and spend a few days there pretty safely. It's surprising how that was even allowed to happen in the first place.
Here.
Beaver Creek?
This episode starts off extremely slowly.
Karen's parents.
Like, the slowest any of these games have been up to this point.
Our grandparents.
To be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of this, but let's see if I can pick it up from this point onwards.
So we can go there and they'll probably help us.
In the morning, we leave the house after packing our things.
You out here?
Then, the most predictable thing ever happens with the dog Mushroom, who we've had at the start of this episode. Genuinely, on my first playthrough, I knew what was about to happen was going to happen. And it's why I was annoyed when we got the dog in the first place, because I knew they would do some stupid, cheap gut punch. Which they do. The dog gets killed by a cougar. And Daniel spots this, and you have a choice whether to let Daniel kill the cougar or not. Rest in peace, Mushroom, though, you're a real one. I could let Daniel kill the cougar here, but I mean, it's not the cougar's fault, it was just doing animal things. You can't really punish an animal for hunting and for something that isn't wrong in, you know, any world for animals. They're going to kill other animals, it's how they survive. This moment does hit emotionally, I guess, but again, it's way too obvious they went out killing the pet for some cheap emotional moment. Which obviously still works slightly because, you know, nobody likes seeing animals get harmed. But I think this game is better when it's given us, you know, legitimate human emotional moments. Like in the first game. I don't hate this part though, but yeah, it's just a bit of a cliche, isn't it? That the pet gets killed off for sadness. Anyway, once we bury the dog, well, it's optional. If you kill the cougar, you can bury the dog. If not, then you can't. But after this, we get a nice montage of us travelling through the woods going towards our grandparents' place. Now, somebody with, you know, a smart eye here might recognise that this is the same place we are in the Captain Spirit episode.
We made it, Daniel.
If you want
Once
us
we
to help you,
get into our grandparents, they welcome us in.
hurt
And
that police officer
Claire
in
here,
Seattle.
our grandmother, makes so much sense when she's speaking to us about the situation we have been in,
I don't
which
know.
I'll let play for a bit here.
I swear I don't. Too much happened and I'm trying to figure it out, but all I know is that he shot Dad. And now he's gone.
Oh, sweetie. We are so sorry for what happened to your father, but why did you run away if you're innocent?
I didn't want Daniel to see Dad. Like that. I felt like I had to protect him.
Now, this is the final point where I'd really say that the brothers, well, not brothers really, it's Sean's decision obviously, should just give up.
Maybe for
It isn't feasible to take a 9-year-old across the whole country without ruining their childhood, which is what we are doing to Daniel.
You can't be
Look, it wouldn't be perfect because I'm sure Sean is apprehensive facing the law, I've said, but
At least you've
I still think it's the ideal scenario in this situation.
We're glad you two are okay.
You can really get the vibe
We
that
have to lay
Stephen
down
and
the
Claire's
rules.
house is
No
a very
mess,
quiet house.
no
We are
noise,
given quite a strict set of
no
rules.
circus.
The
By
biggest
Claire.
rule is keep your
But
heads low.
Given the ordeal that Sean and Daniel have been through, I think they would take this right now. This is more than good enough for them.
Nosy.
You can see the controlling nature of Claire and Stephen here though, and maybe we'll begin to understand why our mother sort of ceased all contact with everyone.
Guess what?
So, listen, I've
In the house we can speak to Stephen, and he brings up the powers he has seen Daniel use. He is obviously pretty confused. Stephen says we shouldn't say anything to protect ourselves. Also says we should stay here, which isn't the worst idea given what's happened so far, but
Yeah,
naturally the police should only be around the corner.
I do.
But how the heck
Sean
is
should
that
know also
possible?
that if he goes down
I
for
mean,
the
he
stuff
can-
that happened in Seattle, then at least Daniel will get to live a normal life in his grandparents'
Not
house, if
really.
worst comes to worst.
It started
Which is
in
more
Seattle
ammunition
after
for the theory that he should give himself up.
everything happened.
We then bump into Chris out in the garden, who we played as in the sort of demo for this game in Captain Spirit. Daniel prevents him from falling. We just got in the middle of Chris and his father having a domestic, which was the end of Captain Spirit, if you'll realise. We also
Daniel,
remind Daniel to not use his
did you forget
powers
everything
out in
about
the
the
open
rules
due to the
already?
risk of it
Sorry,
all,
Sean.
despite the fact that he always ignores us.
Did you want me to let him fall? Really?
I know you only wanted to help, but it's too dangerous. For both of us.
Whatever. Rules are boring.
Yeah, but it'll be worse than boring if we get busted out here. Come on, Daniel.
The next day, we have the house to ourselves for a while, whilst Daniel was stupidly gone over to the neighbours. It's interesting to look on the laptop here and see all the news we missed whilst we've been on the run. I'll leave it up for a second there. Lila is putting a shift on our page by defending us. Now this may seem stupid in the moment to check the computer, but it does not matter. You'll get busted later on in the episode by the cops regardless. Which is a bit silly choice-wise, but I suppose they have to keep you moving for the road trip to carry on. You can't just stay there for the whole game. I'll mention more about the choices in this game later, because, spoiler alert, they actually do matter somewhat on this game. We can speak to Lila again also in the house. She is obviously distraught about the situation, which is understandable given the trauma she may experience from losing her best friend. But this is actually the last time we hear from her in the main game. Now, there may be a little bonus later on potentially, but again, you'll hear about that later.
Lila, I'm so sorry.
Once we've done with these optional things in the house, we can go over to the neighbours, and Daniel has gaslit Chris into believing in his powers, which is pretty funny, I suppose, despite the fact that Daniel is showing his power to somebody else, which he explicitly told him not to only the other day.
Sounds crazy.
We can speak to Chris and ask about the relationship with his father, given we know he is a bit on the abusive side. I don't really know what to say about him as an abuser, but it does make him a pretty deplorable human to abuse a child, regardless of the external factors that may have impacted him. I obviously feel for Chris being a victim of this.
Okay, buddy. You ready?
We then go to the Christmas market with Chris and his father to get a tree for him, which he was promised in the Captain Spirit game. Whilst we're at the market, we interrogate Daniel about blatantly showing his powers in front of Chris. You may notice that these choices are mainly centered about Daniel, which may become important later. Here I'm mentioning the choice of telling Daniel to conceal his power around Chris or not.
He can do all this cool stuff. I wish he could. He reminds me of Noah. I just miss having friends, Sean.
Listen, I understand, but we have to be extra careful out here. You can't let people see you. You know the rules. Road trip?
At the market, we also bump into someone who definitely won't be important in the next episode. She mentions to us that her and her friend group are going to California soon, where I'm sure we won't be joining them. She tells us her name is Cassidy. We see some personality traits from Cassidy and her main friend Finn on display that might not show them as the nicest people, but maybe we'll see this next episode where we can make some more in-depth judgments. We get back home from the market and we decide to break into our mother's room, which we were told explicitly not to. If it was up to me, I would have not done this. If I had a choice, I would have not broke in, but Daniel insists, and you literally can't say no, you have to break in. In the room, we find a letter from their mother that says to help the boys if they come to their grandparents. This is obviously sent from their mother to her mother, or the kids' grandparents. She also lists an address. I was kind of underwhelmed by this reveal. That it's just another room here, and there's not really much hidden information, but I mean, it's kind of realistic. Maybe the grandparents just felt ashamed of their daughter for abandoning her family, so they want to keep that part of their life closed, both literally and metaphorically here. Then we get busted in our mother's room when our grandparents return home, and Claire is cross, and rightfully so, to be fair. Claire is obviously cross at her daughter, but equally, she still gets a bit angry at her grandkids, maybe a bit more than normal, because you can't really blame your grandkids for being curious about their parents, mother in particular, who they barely know. Stephen, our grandfather, wants to leave this heated conversation between his wife and grandchildren, as he does not like hearing his wife not really insult, but be a bit rude towards his child. Then, in the middle of this conversation, he gets stuck under some dodgy cabinet downstairs, which obviously interrupts the conversation between us and our grandmother. We then rush downstairs, and you get the choice to use Daniel's power in front of everyone to lift the cabinet. There ain't many instances where I would show Daniel's power publicly here, but this is one, as you are helping a family member. Also, I think if you don't do this later in the game, Stephen walks with a slight limp in one of the endings, or some of the endings. I'm not particularly sure though, I could be completely wrong though. But in the middle of this dramatic moment with a cabinet, out of nowhere the feds rock up and we have to make a quick escape from our grandparents' house. Claire is very controlling, but her and Stephen both really helped us out in the end here, and they offer to cover for us whilst we make a quick escape out the back of the house. This sort of departing scene between them here is quite a nice touch, and emotionally this episode does hit the small times it does throw the punches.
What are we gonna do?
Go hide in the garage. No. No. No way. If the police searches the house, that makes the two of you accomplices.
Get your bags and go out the back door. I'll distract him.
Really?
Yes. Now, get the hell out of here.
So sorry for everything. I wish we could have helped you more. I wish you could stay here with us. Watch out for your brother, Sean.
Yes. Be careful. We'll see you as soon as we can, okay?
Thanks for helping us. Both of you.
Oh, we love you. Now hurry up.
Daniel, wait for me while I go upstairs.
Once we're leaving the house though, a cop car sees us and comes after us. And due to what we said to Daniel earlier, Chris gets absolutely pelted by a car thinking he can stop the powers. And I'm a horrible person for laughing at this, but it is kind of hilarious. Once again, this may or may not happen depending on your choices, but it did in my playthrough. One genuine nitpick here of this episode though is, what the hell are Sean and Daniel doing on the main road? They're trying to escape from the cops. Why would you just go on a road? I'm not sure. It makes no sense. But maybe in some positive news here, maybe Chris's family have some big lawsuit money coming because he got absolutely annihilated by a cop car. I mean, I suppose he just sort of ran out on the road though, so it is his fault, so maybe not. Daniel is upset
Why?
about Chris getting hit by a car, but he takes it relatively well, I guess.
Why?
Maybe as a result of this though, Daniel may become a bit of a prick next
The
episode.
car barely touched him.
We should see though. The episode then ends with us getting on a train, which is suspiciously like what those characters we met earlier said they'd do. Also, just off the top of my head now, in Captain Spirit, it is mentioned that a lot of teenagers were using trains to, hop around from place to place. But again, I do wonder if we will come into contact with these people. And that ends the episode though. We carry on to the next part of our road trip. I can't lie, this is a pretty episode. It's fine, it's inoffensive, but it's a bit too long for what it offers, and it really drags at certain points, particularly the opening half, or opening hour, so I'm not sure about half. There's nothing that really stands out in this episode either. I do like the contrast of the home life we have with our grandparents, compared to last episode in the forest and the start of this episode. But maybe they could have put more into this episode for runtime and, dragged out some other stuff less, I guess. I'm just feeling a pretty bog standard C tier for this one because it doesn't do anything too awful. It's just probably like a 6 out of 10 episode for me, which would make it just scrape into the C tier. Let's see if the game can improve though going into the next episode. Episode 3, Wastelands. Again, we start off with the wolf story, but then we get a flashback which begins with On Melancholy Hill by Gorillaz. If you don't like this song, something is wrong with you. Sean and Daniel here get in a fight in this flashback, and Sean is kind of a prick here. His dad is a real one though.
Dude,
I wish he didn't die.
to stay out of my room.
Ow! That hurt!
Yeah, I'm not fucking around anymore. Got it? Do you hear me, Daniel? You shall not enter your brother's room. Watch out, man.
You started it, dickhead!
What is this crap? Look. Please? Listen, Sean. I can't do this on my own. I can't. I need you to help me. I know you don't want to babysit Daniel. You grow up, you need space, more freedom. I get it. But we're a trio now, and you gotta take some responsibility. That little shit is just a kid. You're almost an adult.
Sorry I took it.
Ends with us speaking to our brother and giving him a watch, which we see next to us when we actually wake up in reality. When we wake up as a player, we have no idea where we are. But our first clue of our location is us seeing the dog from last episode at the foot of our tent. Then we are made aware of the fact that it is around the end of February, which puts it about 4 months after the incident happened. We see some casual nudity as we exit the tent.
Hi, yeah,
To summarise where we are though, we're basically working on a weed farm in California with the people we met last episode, but it's not just Finn and Cassidy, there's a bunch of others as well. It's about a group of nearly 10, but slightly less. We then go to the lake with Finn and Daniel, who are throwing knives. We get invited to try out, but Daniel sabotages us by using his power.
You're pushing it, Daniel.
He does not listen to us about his power, despite being told thousands of times. He then knocks us over during an argument. Daniel may start veering into annoying territory this episode.
You're gonna get busted, Inano.
Daniel is starting to move over and be more friendly with Finn. He stopped wearing the watch we gave him in the flashback. This obviously shows a tension growing between the brothers. Maybe because Daniel thinks Sean is too controlling, but like at this point, Sean is basically Daniel's father. Well, he's at least his father figure, so he sort of needs to be a bit controlling, maybe more so than Daniel would like.
I didn't mean to.
I'm okay.
We then get picked up by a truck which takes us to the Wii farm. This really shows how far we've come since that first episode. Imagine telling somebody 10 minutes into episode 1 that we would be here at the start of episode 3. Merrill, the boss guy who runs the farm, interrogates us about keeping our brother under control. If this doesn't happen, we will be fired. Guys, I really wonder if Daniel will listen to us when we tell him to not mess up around the farm.
Look, I'm not trying to bust your balls, but this is a pot farm.
Finn later in the day tells us that his father testified against his own children when we speak with him by himself. He says that after they busted his family for running some criminal organisation, his father did turn on them.
I had 3 big brothers who spoiled me.
Aww. You were the baby boy?
Like Daniel. But my family was kind of messed up. My dad was like a front for hot cars. Yeah. He'd steal, strip, and sell them. My brothers and I helped him. You know, typical shit. Till we got busted. Fucking feds wanted me and my brothers to testify. But my dad narked on us instead.
Damn, Finn. That sucks. What happened?
I went to jail. When I got out, I was like, fuck everybody.
Pretty much every person here around this camp has some tortured past, mainly due to dysfunctional families. You can gather that when speaking to everyone. For instance, Cassidy had an abusive father who was also racist, which let us run away from home. The lake scenery here around the camp is gorgeous. We can view this when we are teaching Daniel to control his powers once again. Daniel says we want him to use our power a lot of the time, but if anything, I've been against him using the power in my playthrough. You can take your pick about this being a forced contrivance or Daniel just being very annoying, though, between this argument with the brothers. He then gets really angry at us and decides to lift some massive tree stump from below the lake.
I don't like this new emo Daniel.
This is definitely the episode where Daniel starts getting into the annoying territory, which is quite bad for this game.
Am I a bad big brother? Because I hang out with other people?
You're always with them. And with Cassidy, too.
Don't be so jealous. She's cool.
She's weird. Lila was way better.
You don't know her.
I mean, never mind.
That's it. Enough. You're being a brat. Can't say anything without you having a shit fit. We're family. We still have a long way to go. And we have to go together. Right? I know it sucks. But you have to grow up now.
Daniel, stop it!
Later on in the day, though, we crowd around the fire as a group. This is stylistically the most similar to the first game in terms of the atmosphere of this episode.
You see that shit? It's a fucking
This episode takes place in one location, and we develop relationships with a relatively decent amount of characters. This is pretty relaxing here. It's sort of a nice breather for us to not worry about being hunted by the police in the last two episodes, but again, we have some in-depth discussions about bad moments in our lives for the rest of the camp. Which is quite entertaining, but you know, if you don't like trauma dumps, then this might not be the scene for you. We can speak about our dog dying, as they say. We don't have to speak about what happened in Seattle, because obviously that's pretty heavy. After this discussion with the campfire, we then cut to the next morning. That's actually kind of a lie. You can optionally get a haircut late at night if you want, or you can return to your tent with Daniel. But that's not really important. On the way to the farm in the morning, I completely forgot the song they used here in this montage when we were on the truck. Which, I remember listening to this song quite a lot, like 10 years ago. They went relatively popular-ish with the soundtrack for this game. So I wonder how much that cost them to get for the licensing for these songs and permission. Although there were some popular songs in the first game also, like, I mean, literally they used Spanish Sahara in their funeral scene for Chloe, which is quite big.
That's why you keep coming back.
Later on in this next day, though, we're about to get paid by Meryl for our work, but then naturally our brother does something extremely snooping by snooping around Meryl's living room, despite us telling them to do nothing.
What the fuck?
Meryl then withholds the pay as punishment from everyone and fires us on our brother. Daniel is just an obstacle this episode. Then Daniel is about to get, I guess, slapped or punched by Joe, which is kind of child abuse. But Daniel uses his powers in front of everyone and launches an ashtray at him. Only Finn, Cassidy and Jacob see this.
First off, no payday.
Oh,
fuck that!
Boss.
No way!
Don't do that to us. We earned that money.
Sean, you and your brother are fired.
What?
And don't come back or Big Joe will take care of your ass.
Please, Meryl.
That's bullshit, man!
Man, I know you're pissed, but Sean is a good worker. Never brought you any losers, right?
Sir. Quiet! Shut the fuck up. Sean, I warned you one too many times. We tried your way, now it's my turn. Okay, Joseph. Just teach him a lesson.
Let me go!
Come on, man.
Big Joe, what are you gonna do? He's just a little fucking kid!
This ain't your business. Think I like it. It's mine. Ow! What the?
Crazy. Fuck.
After this, though, at night, we discuss the powers that everyone saw Daniel use here. And I was wondering why Jacob was here. He seems kind of out of place with Finn and Cassidy because, you know, we haven't really spoken to him. He's just a generic side character in the camp. But obviously, they're just setting up the next episode here. Whilst talking with us at saw Daniel's power, Finn then suggests robbing Meryl. This is a stupid idea in my opinion. Later on we reinforce this to Finn, but I have a suspicion he will not listen to us. Cassidy heavily supports our line of argument here. Later on we get a tattoo from Cassidy and head to the lake. I would like to bring up the fact that we are entering a probably filthy lake here after just getting a tattoo. Like, Sean logically should have every disease ever after doing this, but he just doesn't. This is our romance option here, by the way, of Cassidy. And you can go either way in my opinion. It's not like there's many consequences given the structure of this game. I'm pretty sure you can romance Finn also, which is an option. Feel free to do that if you want. Anyways, in this playthrough you can end up having sex with Cassidy. Because of the need to be halal, I'll skip this point by showing it in the video. I won't show it obviously. But if you're that interested in watching this for whatever reason, then you can find something on YouTube. I don't think the sex here happens with Finn. For whatever reason. I'm pretty sure you just kiss him, but you need to check on that. I might be incorrect.
Did you see Finn? He was with Daniel.
If you want to see though, just Google it. I'm sure you can find something.
See anybody out there?
After this with Cassidy though, we then realise that Daniel and Finn are missing once we leave the tent. Daniel exists in this episode just to do the exact opposite of what we say. It's a bit obnoxious at this point.
Later.
Sean and Cassidy then heads to Joe's house to steal the truck to chase after them because obviously they're going to Meryl's house. We sort of want to intervene. We have a puzzle to break into the truck to catch them, which is entertaining enough. Once we're at the farm and we catch up with Finn, he offers us the opportunity to rob Meryl again. I refuse this once again due to the inherent danger. Finn and Daniel break into Meryl's house, or whatever it's called. I think it's house. But, surprisingly, well, not really surprisingly, they get caught in the act, and obviously we're next to them as this happens, so it's quite bad.
How many are you?
Yeah, then obviously Meryl's quite cross, obviously, because I mean, naturally you should be. Starts threatening us. He has a gun pointed at us. He then makes us all lie down. And I'm pretty sure if you don't intervene here, Finn will get shot. So I kind of tell Daniel to use his power, and it all causes chaos. All chaos breaks loose. Cassidy gets knocked out, so does Finn.
Wait! Stop! No!
Yeah, and then once this massive explosion happens, it cuts to sort of a cinematic of the room later on. Again, Cassidy's on the ground, so is Finn. Daniel's nowhere to be seen though. By the way, he got shot earlier in the thing, in the shoulder. I'm not sure shot, but there's a bit of a wound there. But definitely shot, but I don't know how bad. Clearly not bad though, we'll see next episode. But the main thing to draw from this here is that Sean has a massive shard of glass in his eye, which clearly isn't very good. Thank you, Daniel, for that one. We clearly have the brother of the year here. I sure can't wait to see him next episode. Overall, this is a pretty solid episode. I really like the group at the farm for the most part. They're flawed characters, but they are really human, which is what I like about it. Stylistically, this is the closest we get to the first game here, and I enjoyed that about it. Although it's still a bit inferior to the first game in my eyes. My main issues with this episode come with the fact that Daniel was so annoying. So that just lowers it a tier, a whole tier, just that alone. Honestly though, I don't actually have that much to say about this episode as I thought I would when going into it. There's not much plot in this episode. I mean, the game so far has been about a road trip with our brother to Mexico, and that gets put on hold for this whole episode. People love to say this is clearly the best episode of this game, but honestly, I kind of disagree. And if anything, I think this episode is slightly overrated. Don't get me wrong, I still like this episode. Still quite enjoyable, but I'm struggling to put it any higher than just comfortably in the B tier. But maybe episode 4 will be an upgrade on that. Let's see. Episode 4, Faith. Saying this for a third time now, but we get another Wolf recap. Obviously the brothers are separated as a result of last episode's ending, and we don't have a clue where Daniel is. We get a flashback to episode 1 location in the forest, but it's actually a dream where Daniel is apologising to us for going with Finn when we told him not to. He asks us to get him, but we have no idea where he is. He then jumps off a cliff, and we wake up in a hospital bed 2 months after the events of last episode, which puts us about half a year since the incident which started this whole journey. Naturally, as we are in a public location like this, we are under the custody of the police. They finally caught us. We are getting our eyes tested by a doctor, and our depth perception is not very good. This is due to us playing on a 2D screen though, and it literally being impossible to tell the difference. Also, our eyes are being tested as a result of that glass shard that got sent through Sean's eye. He's lost an eye basically. We are then interrogated by some agent, and she says we may be going to prison for murder. I mean, given the scene, it would be impossible to prove that one teenager could cause all that destruction. But I've already mentioned this so many times. She's looking to find out what happened at the farm. Our Dr. Joey gives us our diary also, and we realise that Jacob from the last episode has Daniel with him in Nevada. I really didn't understand how he got Daniel to go with him, given what happened in the last episode. I refuse to believe Daniel would travel a state away with some guy he doesn't even really know after basically blowing up a farm. Maybe he had nothing else to do though. I mean, clearly not. He's a child. We then get a puzzle sequence where we have to escape the hospital, which is quite entertaining due to there being many routes you can take. You don't have to hurt anyone to escape, but I wanted to try something different here, so I hit the security guard over the head with like a metal bar. Whilst escaping, we bump into Finn completely randomly in the hospital room, and we can speak to him. And I say I don't blame him about the whole farm explosion thing, but you know, I actually kind of do. I lied. He's a bit of an idiot. Doesn't matter, we don't see him after this. And if he's dead, you just don't see him here. We escape the hospital by stealing a car. We enter Nevada in this car. We then also get another dream with our father in the car this time, and it's a pretty wholesome moment, but I don't care much either way. After this, it ends abruptly as some random racists pull up at our car window. I really don't know what to do in this scenario. Also, this is where my main issue with the politics in this game is portrayed. This game loves to give us the most cartoonishly over-the-top racist characters in this game, which these people definitely exist, but in my opinion, this distracts from the actual racism that has such a grip in modern society. I'm on about the institutional racism here that would have definitely impacted Sean in certain ways in his life at this point, and we do see this vaguely at certain points in the game. You can see certain newspaper articles throughout the game which paint the police officer and also that racist dude who came in episode 1 as some like upstanding citizens and nice people, when that's just not the case. One is a murderer, the other should be in jail for a long time because he kidnapped 2 minors.
I had to pull over to get some rest, you know? I swear.
But as I said earlier, I still support the political message in this game, and I admire it for taking a strong stance. This game is particularly suited to the current political climate, where these racist beliefs are allowed to be expressed openly, even more so on social media sites. Obviously it existed back then, but in my personal experience it's only amplified now. I just slightly dislike the cartoonish way this game shows racism when these are beliefs that are very common in the world and they hold a lot of ground in modern society. After this traumatic event though with Sean, we pick up later on as we're walking down the highway alone, presumably as the car we were in ran out of fuel. Some truck pulls up and we kind of have to take the lift he offers us given the circumstances we were in. Turns out he's a real one and offers us food. We then arrive at our destination. It's pretty obvious that this truck driver turns out to be harmless because it will be too obvious to have him be a horrible person, and given what we just experienced in the desert. Our first observation of this church here, which Daniel was in, is that not much is going on around here. There's a car park, but it just seems quite deserty around here, which, I mean, is kind of stating the obvious. When we actually go inside the church that Daniel is in, we find he's been treated like a miracle. Some woman we don't know is also preaching in the church. She treats Daniel like a sign from God. This is pretty obvious when we realise Daniel was wearing this religious guise, though. I mean, these guys are insane, which we'll see later, but to be honest, I think most religious people would act like this if some kid with special powers that aren't physically possible came along. So I can't really blame them for thinking it is a miracle, but they're still quite culty. We then see Daniel for the first time and speak to him. He lifts the cross with his powers for this though, and all the churchgoers go crazy.
Miracle! Do you feel your soul rising like the cross? Bless you, Daniel. Rise. Get up. Stand up. Thank you, Daniel. Daniel's been touched by God. Oh, it's a miracle. I can't believe it. Thank you.
I should also mention here that the Reverend Preacher, whatever she is, her daughter, we bump into her, and she's about the same age as Daniel, and we can tell quite early on that she's very sick.
Grown up and I know.
We then actually speak to Daniel, and he apologises about her eye because of what happened at the farm. I mean, obviously, you kind of blind your brother in one eye.
It's okay.
Elizabeth, who is the name of the preacher, claims that we can't be in this community as long as we have sinned and we need to repent. She then makes us look bad in front of the children and sort of manipulates them by claiming we struck her down. She like falls to the ground when the children aren't looking. So she's sort of slighting, I guess, yeah.
Come on!
Why don't we ask him what he wants to do?
Do not touch me!
What the fuck?
What did you do?
Nothing.
Enough. You spilled blood in the Lord's home.
Sean, what happened?
Your brother came in here, impure and acting like a criminal. But he can be saved, Daniel.
I'm sorry, Sean. She's right. I will pray for you. Then, when you're ready, we can.
She's trying to manipulate.
Whilst we were away, she managed to turn Daniel against us. He was still happy to see us only moments ago, but now he's not. We then get booted out of the cult-like religion type thing.
Daniel!
There you go. Satisfied? Now don't you ever come back.
Then out of nowhere, our mother pops up and takes us to our motel room. This is kind of abrupt.
You won't get him back like this. Let's go. Sean, what happened to your eye?
But yeah, she asks about our eye and says that we won't get our brother back like this, which is fair enough. She says she came by the request of Jacob.
Well,
in the motel room, we can speak to Jacob on the phone. He tells us to meet him.
Hello? Jacob, it's me, Sean.
Sean? No way. I've been waiting to hear from you for months. So you found my note in your sketchbook?
Yeah.
Where are you? You have to come here, Sean.
I know. I'm not far. In a motel.
Good. Listen, I can't talk right now. I gotta go.
Wait! Daniel, how's he doing?
Meet me tomorrow afternoon on Brandy Highway. There's a junction just above Haven Point.
We then speak to our mother, and Karen, her name. I might have not mentioned that already, but I think I have, I'm not sure. But her name's Karen. She tells us that she was not meant to be a wife or a mother, and she had to leave because she just wasn't happy with herself in her own life. She said it was the hardest decision she ever had to make.
Are you serious?
Which, I mean, yeah, it would be a pretty hard decision to leave your whole family, so I guess she's kind of right.
Right?
making your own choices doesn't mean you can never
We can learn a lot from Karen here, which boils down to her not wanting to settle down with a family because she was afraid life was slipping away from her, which I sort of understand. I do really like Karen in this game as a character. She is very flawed but honest with us. She's made some choices that some players would initially disagree with, but maybe others would be willing to hear her out. Now in this type of game, this choice doesn't work exactly as I think you want it to, because you have an inclination to instantly side of her because she just isn't your mother, so you didn't experience the trauma that Sean did when she left. I'm sure if she was, your response may be different when she's trying to justify her actions.
It wasn't about him. It was me.
Karen has a very similar mindset to our group from the last episode. She also wants to live outside of social norms of society, which is explained further on in the next episode. We also reminisce over Esteban with her, which I quite like as it reminds us why we are in this situation currently, because of what happened to him. At the meeting point the next day, Karen asks us about Daniel, and can I say he was alright in the first 2 episodes, but in these last couple, it's been unbearable. After this conversation, it turns out, when Jacob shows up, that he says he saved our money and actually took decent care of Daniel. May have made a mistake taking him here, though, with the colt.
No idea what he looked like when I found him.
We also need to get his sister away from Lisbeth, as well as Daniel, because, as we learned earlier,
all by himself.
his sister is quite sick.
I couldn't just leave him there.
And Lisbeth does not believe in modern medicine. Once again, I'll ask how Daniel travelled with Jacob, with him in a fit of rage like that. It still doesn't make sense, especially when you speak to Jacob here. I don't know how Jacob convinced him again. Doesn't seem like the type of guy. I mean, they barely spoke to each other last episode. Furthermore, Daniel got shot at the end of the last episode. How did they treat that? I don't know.
Scared he was. The blast.
It's never explained to us. We break into Elizabeth's home with Jacob in an attempt to find his sister's medical records, which are in her office. This is obviously to find out what is actually explicitly wrong with her.
Take a peek.
Jacob then tells us that he is gay in the office. That came across really abrupt, but Jacob tells us that he is gay, and when growing up, when he expressed these feelings, his family tried to get him into conversion therapy, which is just evil.
Wanted to cure you from
Elizabeth, who's his mother, by the way, if I didn't explain, so it explains a lot.
Pretty much.
We can also learn that Elizabeth is trying to adopt Daniel, obviously, when he's getting back from these people.
They thought I was a freak. A sinner.
Is that why you ran away?
Yep. Took me 5 years to understand what was up. I was too scared. Confused. I really did believe I was a sinner, so I thought I had to atone for my sins.
Atone? For what sins? I don't get how they can preach this kind of crap. I mean, you met Finn and everyone. Are they sinners then?
Of course not. I just didn't know different, Sean.
Once we get these records and then confront Lisbeth in the church trying to get Daniel back, it's quickly apparent that she just falls into the cartoonishly evil status. This confrontation is just stupid. Furthermore, I like when Sean is getting beaten down that Karen just stands there and doesn't even try to intervene in any way. We tried to convince Daniel to join us, and maybe it works for some people, but Daniel was just too annoying in the last episodes for me to really care about him. Like, I don't really care if we save him or not from Lisbeth. But Daniel eventually is convinced by us to come with us, and we can kill Lisbeth after this because she blocks us from leaving when the whole church is burning down. But I mean, it's not like she could constantly block us anyway. I mean, you can kill her if you want to, but it'll be stupid too. There's no good reason. I mean, we're not murderers. But we leave the church with our mother and Daniel and drive off into the sunset, and that is the end of this episode, and it's comfortably the worst one so far of anything. They really dropped the ball in this one. I don't want to speak about this episode that much because it's just not enjoyable. Again, main issues though, Daniel is way too annoying, and the premise of this entire game relies on him not being annoying, but he is. Again, actively dislike playing for this episode. It just did not seem very realistic, at all. The character's annoying, cartoonishly evil. Yeah, weird cult. Just not really Life is Strange. Like, it's almost like there's no subtlety to this episode. It's just everything is right in your face and annoying. To make this road trip format work, the supporting characters need to work, and they just don't. They're not memorable. They're just annoying. Karen, fair enough, but the others, it's just Lisbeth, and that's literally it. Jacob, I don't really care for. He's somewhat cool, but I respect his drive to get his sister from this cult, but again, I don't really care. The setting of this episode is interesting, like last episode. Last episode, the plot didn't even advance really, but it was still interesting because I liked the characters and I liked the setting we were in. This one, we barely spent any time in the town where this church is located. We're just presented with this one family. That is the town. The town is just one family. We really only see the mother and act of knowledge given to us by Jacob. This episode does do some minor things correct though. Like, I enjoyed the start of the hospital, and that's quite fun. And Karen might be the best side character in this game, but it's not enough to save it from being a dumpster fire. Villain is pathetic, Daniel's annoying, plus the runtime's quite short as well compared to the others, which maybe is a good thing for this episode because I didn't enjoy it. It also takes us about half the episode to get to the actual conflict of it all. I genuinely think this episode is just a D tier, and that's generous, I think, given the fact I'm not doing tiers lower than that. It could easily fit into like an E or an F tier. At the end of this final part of the series, which is will be 2 episodes time, I'll show my numerical ratings out of 10 for all these episodes. Those, so watch out for that. We can see it in depth further there. Anyways, hopefully the final episode can improve on this car crash of an episode. Let's see. Episode 5, Wolves. Well, here we go for the finale of the second game, and I think I have quite a lot written on this one. It's definitely an interesting episode to say the least. The wolf story continues again for the last time. We start off with probably the best scenery in this game. It's also 7 weeks since last episode, which puts us at roughly 8 to 9 months since the chaos in Seattle. We are in Arizona at a canyon with Daniel, and we are just waking up in the morning above this canyon, and it's really gorgeous, but there'll be some more scenery here later on, which is even better in the evening. Daniel speaks to us and asks if we are criminals, and we probably are at this point, but we're bigger idiots for continuing to run. It is nice to have a moment here with Daniel where he's not unbearable. This is the first time I've experienced this since episode 2, probably.
Cops catch us.
We go down the canyon and make it back to this weird town desert thing where Karen lives. It's a community in the middle of the desert for people who just want to escape from society, which is what we learned from our last episode. That's quite a big personality trait of hers. Whilst exploring this place, we see a certain trailer belonging to somebody called David, and I wonder who this is. I sure wonder if it's not the same one from before. You can also spot the board here in my playthrough behind his trailer that's in Chloe's garden. I think it's an exact copy. I am pretty sure of that. This place in the desert that Karen lives at is just really peaceful. I can see the appeal in it.
Yes.
Daniel tasks us with a treasure hunt here in the middle of free roaming round. And then Karen returns with the David from the first game. I was in some desperate need of some nostalgia. I love this. We can speak to David here firstly, and I love a line from him saying he doesn't know anyone with superpowers before. I think you do. I think you do.
I try to be a good influence. Not always easy.
Also,
but
I should add that everyone in the camp, or I guess not camp, community we should say, they know about Daniel's powers. He openly uses them. They just don't really care that much. Well, they do, but it's not a bad thing for them.
Combat was easier.
Because in our playthrough of the first game, Arcadia Bay got destroyed, we sadly learned that Joyce died in the storm from David, but that Chloe is still alright.
She died.
David tells us that he used to always fight between him and Chloe, which we know. In the other playthrough, though, if you saved Arcadia Bay, David here would state that he and Joyce divorced, presumably as a result of the trauma and the death of Chloe. And I think a child's death is a trigger for a lot of divorcees. Great, there probably are a lot of studies on that, though, that I should read maybe, because I don't really have much of an idea.
Deal with her. Wish I did. But we eventually made our peace. Anyway, you can't go back.
Nope. Thanks for talking, David.
Later in the day, Karen informs us that the feds are coming to look for us. So, it's sort of a last night in this community. We go to the top of the canyon, which we start the episode in with Karen and Daniel. She takes us to the top, and I'm surprised it took this long for the cops to come to us, though. We thought they'd been a bit quicker. But at the top of this canyon in the night, it's gorgeous. Just, I'll let the scenery play out for a bit here, but she gives us these balloons. I don't know what the correct term is for them, but the ones they use like Chinese New Year. You light up, put them in the sky. It's really cool. It's a really special moment in this game. The next morning, we arrive back at Away, which is what the community is called. And Karen says she will offer to go to jail for us effectively, or get given up to herself to the police as a result of cover for us. She says this as she feels she's let us down before by leaving, and it's a way of giving back to us.
We need to get your asses to.
She also can take the fire at the church off our hands and say she caused it.
You don't have to do this, Karen.
I let you guys down before. Not this time. I knew.
After this conversation, though, we can go around the camp and say our goodbyes to everyone. There are some other people in the camp, but they're not that important really to the plot. And also Karen.
Be proud.
We say goodbye to her, speak to her for the last time. She gives us a reminder of our father and how proud he would be seeing the brothers go back to his homeland. She also reminds us that Daniel also had to grow up too fast. And that's my main problem with this plan again. We took away Daniel's childhood from him.
But never did.
Also, one final note with Karen here. Slightly earlier on, you have an option to write her a letter in her trailer. I took the opportunity to do this, considering I really like her character. And she made me understand why she made the decision she did. So I respect her a lot for that. After this, we can speak to David, who, for the purposes of this game, basically just says we maybe should give ourselves up to the police, which, yeah, I sort of understand. I do agree with him. I'll mention more about that in a second. But we also get our information dump of the aftermath of the first game. I fangirled so hard this moment, genuinely. The excitement I felt on my first playthrough, knowing I would get to learn more about Max and Chloe and just Arcadia Bay as a whole was brilliant. We can learn some other pieces of minor trivia from the first game, that Victoria was in the basement when the storm was going down, and that's what saved her life from the storm. David also intervened and saved her in this one. She's now back with her parents in Seattle, I think, working at her... I forget what it's called, but it's called like the Chase Room or something, I think, and I forget what it is. But it might be a photography gallery, but I have no idea. It could be completely wrong. We can also see a photo of Chloe and Max here in the trailer, David's trailer, and they have changed a bit. Most noticeably the hair colour. The Polaroids in this trailer also show that Max and Chloe have visited Away. Now, David then speaks to us about what to do when we get to the border. He tells us to go down off the road. Go down to like a desert part and break through there. Seems pretty informed on this, which makes sense for him given his past career choices. He tells us we only have one chance at this, which I mean actually is incorrect. Then he tells us about the storm of Arcadia Bay and how there were only some of the survivors were Chloe and Max basically. He says he hated them initially for running away, but now he understands what they've done. Which I guess is sort of similar to us with Karen, in a way. Also, now Chloe and David finally get along. He's finally moved on, and they have a good relationship. The slight introduction here of the Life is Strange original theme as well, when during this conversation, is just brilliant. It genuinely is a goosebump generating moment. David, he then gives us great advice, as I said before, by saying we can't hide forever, and maybe we should face the law head on and try and deal with our problems that way, which is kind of what I've been saying the whole time. But equally now, the longer we've waited, the worse it gets. We've only ranked up a crime sheet at this point. So maybe it's at this point, it's too far gone. It's logical to keep running away now. I do like in this game how some characters challenge us in our plans. David and Karen act as two sort of opposing viewpoints here, which I'm a fan of. David then gets a call from Chloe on his phone, and I'm going to eavesdrop on this. David is also one of the most logical people in this game with his viewpoints. And again, I love the callback to the first game. I will say it doesn't exactly paint this game that well for me personally, when I'm much more excited for this mention of the first game than some other parts of this game, but I guess it is what it is. But anyway, back to the eavesdropping. When we listen to the phone call, we can learn that Max and Chloe are in New York, and that Max is putting her work in a gallery.
How about that other gallery she told me about?
Which is basically what we learn from that, but it's interesting enough. If you want to know what it's like another playthrough, just go listen to a video of it.
Those solar panels are finally up and running. You'll see them next time you come by. I don't know. Maybe if you drive down to Louisiana or Texas, that'd be cool. Yeah, gotcha. All right. Take care then. Wish Max luck for me, okay? Bye-bye. Love ya.
We then leave away, which hits relatively hard. Daniel is apprehensive about going to Mexico, which is pretty spot on. He asks how he's going to cope in Mexico, considering he can't speak the language, and, you know, I've kind of been getting at this the whole time.
I'll teach you, man.
Daniel, you're on my side here.
You think so?
After the journey, we rock up to the border, and Daniel questions the difference in border between Canada and Mexico. Which is a decent enough point, but I'm not informed enough to know the exact difference.
Why did they build one?
Go and listen to somebody else who knows more than me, but it's an interesting starting point, you know, to educate yourself. We ask Daniel to annihilate the border with his power, which somehow he can. He just rips it in half, basically. Now, when I first played through this, I knew something bad was incoming, and naturally, it does when Daniel gets sniped out of nowhere on the way back to the car and about to cross the border. Some random racist vigilante border hunters shoot us and hold us down. They get arrested when actual police show up, and so do we. We then wake up in some cell. We know Daniel should actually be alright. Now, this does do the racism commentary aspect well here, when it shows how the police often benefit off the work of racists like this and how they're quite closely intertwined. So I'm a fan of that. We have a conversation with a couple who have been apprehended trying to cross the border here, and it's a nice enough moment. They've warned us that it's not easy to live in Mexico right now, and that it is hard to let your dreams come true, but our hand has kind of been forced. We're then taken to some interrogation room and handcuffed to the table. Guy reads out a crime sheet, which doesn't sound good, which again, why do we keep on doing it?
Motel room. Caught in another weird explosion at a pot for
The officer says, originally in Seattle when the shooting happened, why did we not just wait for the police if we're innocent? Which is what I've been saying, but again, I understand why he ran away immediately, but you should have realised soon it was a bad idea. This officer then questions us on stuff blowing up wherever we go, which is kind of funny. Then the lights start flickering in this prison type thing when we're speaking to him, and then Daniel breaks us out. The bullet he got shot with only grazed him, apparently. We then escape this border place of Daniel. We have a little few puzzle tiny bits here, but nothing important. We also free this couple who we were with speaking to, so we let them get into America. Good job for us. On the way back to the border in a car, Sean and Daniel have a conversation about their father and how they miss him. There's also a bit of an eye-rolling reference here to being the 4th of July game, which is a very on the nose about the whole independence theme. But I don't mind it, I guess. We then approach the border for a second time, but at a main checkpoint, and the entire police force is here. Major plot hole here. Why did they go to like a road to cross the border? Why didn't they do what they just did before, where he split the border open, or go back to that gap?
What are we gonna do?
It's a major contrivance here, so they get some big showdown. It's quite stupid in my opinion. In the car, whilst facing off with all the cops, Sean discusses wanting to change what happened in Seattle, but he can't. He says that him and Daniel will be separated if they surrender, which we're then presented with choice in a moment.
To change what happened, but I can't. I'm sorry for my mistakes. I tried my best. I swear.
Sean.
I'm so proud of you, Nano. Just like Dad would be. We both learned a lot together, but you can make your own rules now. If we surrender, they will separate us, Daniel. And if that happens, promise me that you will always do the right thing, okay? Don't waste your power. Be smart like you already are.
I don't want to be separated.
whatever happens, always remember that you're Daniel Diaz.
I promise, Sean. So, how does the story of the Wolf Brothers end?
Now, personally, I think it's right to surrender now. Based off, maybe asking Daniel to murder an entire police force is crazy. But again, Sean should have made the decision months ago. And it's mad you can even consider doing this when comparing this to the start of the game. Imagine if you said at the start of the game that your last choice would be kill a bunch of cops, or not, basically. But hey, that's some character development, I guess. This ending conversation still hits hard, given the relationship we have seen develop throughout this game between the brothers. It also helps that Daniel has been fine this episode. It's not when I'm going to pull my hair out.
And we still have time to choose.
Now, in both my playthroughs of this game, I've chosen to surrender. Now here's where I will speak on the choices in this game, and how they actually matter somewhat. In this game, which I have to give it props for, fair play, don't nod, this is the one game, well up to this point, the one game that it matters. We'll see what it's like in the next game. Now, anyways, back to the choices. Throughout this game, most decisions you make have impacted the behaviour of Daniel throughout. He learns based off what you do. Now, you'll get minor clues throughout episodes based on how Daniel acts, how you've taught him to be good or not. He may act differently depending on this.
Only the good shit.
Now, if you have a playthrough where you're not really a massive prick and commit many crimes, and are just generally respectful to most things around you, Daniel will favour the surrender option in his choice, and he will usually side with that. Now, if you play the opposite way to this, though, go through breaking laws and stuff, he will then favour breaking through and crossing the border. Now, in this ending right now, I had the high morality Daniel, so when I say surrender, he agrees. The brothers are separated tearfully at the border in a moment which is very emotional.
Never forget who you are.
Now, that's it for these brothers, but there is an ending montage which I will go through. In this ending, Daniel returns to live with his grandparents. He visits his brother in prison. Daniel and Chris remain friends. Daniel also visits his mother occasionally and has just an extremely normal childhood. Then he works regular jobs as well. Now this is where the gut punch has happened in this ending. 15 years after the events at the border, Sean is released from prison. He meets with his mother and brother, and also, in this ending, Lila, because we called her in episode 1. Sean just seems broken here. I mean, it would. 15 years and he didn't really do much wrong at all. I mean, he's a victim of his father being shot. It's heartbreaking, but we're not done yet. In this ending, the brothers also return to the spot where they originally camped out at the start of their journey, which is extremely touching. Sean is heartbroken here. Well, probably not. Heartbroken is not the right term, just devastated. And it's understandable given how much of his life he lost behind bars. This really hits hard, man. I love this ending. The brothers then go their separate ways after camping, which suggests they are both on different paths in life now. Daniel is then upset in the car also, after, given what his brother sacrificed for him. This ending is great from a narrative point of view. Sean loses a good chunk of his life for his brother, who is given the chance to be free and live a normal life. Again, though, it should have happened earlier, but still, I like it. I like this ending. Again, I'll note, Lila does not show up in this ending if you don't call it episode 1. I also have a minor nitpick with this ending, but I understand why it didn't go this way, but I would like there to be different times in jail based off your playthrough, Some people commit a lot more crimes than others in this ending. But that's... the redemption end is what it's called, I believe, and it's a good one. Now for some other endings. Now, this is the other ending that can happen when Daniel's morality is good, but in this one, obviously, you would choose to cross the border. Daniel doesn't want to use his power, and is pretty apprehensive, but we force him to by driving full speed to the cops' head and making him have to because they're shooting at us. He then causes carnage at the border, but as we are about to cross, he says he can't do it anymore, and he jumps out of the car just as we are crossing, leaving Sean and Daniel separated at the border. Daniel was then arrested while Sean speeds off into Mexico by himself.
Don't turn back for me. I hope you'll be happy in Mexico.
Now, in this ending, Daniel still returns to his grandparents, and there's some similarities. He's still good friends with Chris. He also saved a bus from going to a lake, so he's using his powers for good. Also visits Karen. 6 years after the events at the border, we see Daniel at his grandparents' house with a bracelet on his leg, letting us know he's basically under house arrest. I'm not sure what the correct term is, but he's definitely under surveillance. Claire then gives Daniel some photos of Sean in Mexico. I believe Karen and Claire also speak on the phone, which shows there's maybe some reconciliation there. The photos of Sean in Mexico show Cassidy of him in my playthrough, and he seems pretty happy there. He also put some sand in the letter. Cassidy also doesn't have to show up in this ending. Finn can if you romance them also, but also neither of them can. But that cuts this ending to an end, and there's sort of a bit less in this ending compared to the other one. This ending is also solid from a narrative point of view though. Sean and Daniel both lose a great deal and are separated permanently pretty much. Sean escapes the confines of the law, but still will always be on the run from America and a permanent outcast from the rest of his family, as he won't be allowed to return to America. Still though, he seems pretty happy in Mexico. But on the other hand, also Daniel's under house arrest and may be under watch permanently given the nature of his powers. You have to assume that the government would try to use his powers in a beneficial way in some way, like surely they use it in the military, so you'd think. Like, in fact, I almost assuming there's no way they wouldn't try and use these powers for some nefarious activities, especially given the political commentary of this game of just racism and that. That sounded a bit generalised, but you know what I mean. This is also probably the best, now that's in quotations here, best ending. Sean doesn't lose a large chunk of his life, but again, there are still some sacrifices, and again, we don't know what happened to Daniel. Now, for the other two endings, also I should mention there's basically 7 endings here, but about 3 or 4, whatever of them are all minor, like the Lila being there one, also like Cassidy Finn, they count as different endings, but no, there are 4 endings in this game. Now for the other two, if we did not teach Daniel to be a good person. In the first one, where we surrender like before, he actually refuses and is very annoyed at us. He then proceeds to start driving the car for us whilst absolutely annihilating the cops. Daniel then says it's his turn to take care of us and goes crazy again.
Shoot! Shoot! Open fire!
Sean! You see that? Mexico, look! He made it!
He then celebrates as we cross the border, but he doesn't yet realise that Sean has been shot in the neck and is bleeding out in the driver's seat. Sean then proceeds to die in front of his brother.
Oh no, no! Please don't! Sean!
In this ending, Daniel proceeds to live alone in Mexico committing crime to sustain himself. He made a mock grave, I guess, for Sean. Obviously there's no body there. Maybe actually he could have taken, but I doubt it. He seems... It's more... Actually no, correct term. It's more of a shrine. He seems very absent and upset, obviously. He's grown up basically as an orphan child alone in Mexico. This is obviously the bleakest ending. He uses his powers to threaten others and just seems very alone. Funnily enough, this was the ending I got on my first playthrough a couple years ago. This one definitely hits emotionally. And whilst I don't dislike any endings, I'm pretty much indifferent on this one still though. Just because, you know, I prefer Sean more than Daniel, if I'm being honest. I guess though it does give you the final dose of Daniel not listening to what you're saying in this game, which results in Sean paying the ultimate price. Again, no, I don't hate this ending. I don't really feel much towards it. Now though, for the final ending, with Daniel having low morality, but we also tell him to make us cross the border. Now here he causes the most destruction in any ending, and he goes absolutely crazy at the border here. This is just pure evil. They easily make it over the border, and in Mexico, Sean and Daniel, both still alive, they run a car repair shop. We get a moment here of Sean being threatened by criminals, but Daniel uses his powers to prevent them. They then both have a beer on the beachfront. Sean then uses his father's lighter, giving us a reminder of why they are here. Maybe this is a good ending for them, but I'm not the biggest fan of it personally. I like it from a narrative point of view, but like just for the brothers themselves. They're stuck in Mexico, and they kind of are evil. You kind of have to be to do what they did. Now look, cops aren't the best people ever, don't get it twisted, but you know, who doesn't have to massacre them like that, you know? This ending does make sense though from a narrative point of view, that Sean and Daniel punished the world by violence, given their entire journey started by unjust violence being enacted on their father. So I guess they've come full circle in a way, and maybe you could justify their actions given the trauma they may have had from the time on the run, and they're just operating on pure anger and hatred for the system that has led them to have to go to Mexico. But those are all the endings. If I had to rate them based on personal preference from a narrative point of view, I'd probably say the first one I got, where Sean's in prison, is my favourite. Then I can't split the one where they go crazy, the Blood Brothers ending, the last one we discussed, where they're both in Mexico, or the one where they get split up at the border. I both like those, and the one with Daniel by himself, I'm not that bothered by him. But in terms of actual endings based on being good for the brothers, I'd say the separated at the border one's probably the best, then the Blood Brothers one, then the prison one, then where Sean died, obviously. Now though, that's that done, I guess, for this game. Now this episode is definitely solid. I have some minor issues with it, or maybe not minor, but slight issues with it, pertaining to not much actually happening in it when you take a deeper look. The road trip basically stops in this episode, which is also the case in episode 3. But that one differs a bit, there's more of a large supporting cast there. Again, I don't mind the first half of this episode, but it doesn't really scream finale, it's quite slow for a finale. I do love the nods to the first game though, and I still like where we are. The main star of this episode though is the amount of endings we have. And the fact that the choices have an impact. Apart from that though, I really don't have too much more to say on this particular episode. I think my thoughts on this game, on this episode, sorry, are basically just on the game as a whole, I guess. But I'll get onto that in a moment. Now, for this episode alone, I'm feeling just a solid B tier. I think it's a solid episode and definitely a much needed improvement in episode 4, and it is a fitting enough ending for the Diaz brothers. I like it for that. Well, now that that's done, it's time to get into some final remarks on Life is Strange 2. I have really conflicted thoughts on this game. On the one hand, I respect it immensely for still keeping some semblance of the Life is Strange vibe, despite it going in such a different direction to the first game. It is genuinely impressive how they managed to keep the core vibe of the first game, but in a different circumstance. This game is great at points, but I also believe it's extremely weak in other elements. For example, the first episode, absolutely brilliant, but I think this is where the game peaks. The road trip structure of this game does negatively impact the game in my opinion, because as soon as you get engaged with the cast of characters, they're ripped away from you by the start of the next episode. To make this work, you need the main protagonist to be great characters, and I think Sean is just passable when compared to Max, and especially Chloe in Before the Storm. Daniel's also okay in parts, but he's just annoying a lot of the time, especially in episode 3 and 4, so I struggle to form the same brotherly bond that Sean would have with him. It may have been a mistake to give the power to a non-playable character also. Part of the reason the first game was so entertaining is because the gameplay feature was just very entertaining itself, and it's something we've probably all theorised of having this power to be able to change all our past decisions. But again, I respect them for trying something different and making us control the person with the powers. Well, it's not control. By that I mean literally, we're controlling the decisions, not ourselves, but we're influencing the person with the power instead of doing it ourselves. Personally, though, the core issue I think that they should have just dealt with is I think the Life is Strange games should just be contained to a small area, which is what made the first game so special for me. It's also why I still prefer Before the Storm. Despite the game's plot not being perfect in that game, but again, that's also the case in the second game. It's just a pretty basic plot at the end of the day. It's just going to Mexico, which obviously cannot compete with the first mystery we were to uncover in the first game, and Before the Storm had the benefit of basically giving a small world building in Arcadia Bay, which you will love. The supporting casts are still fine though throughout this game, bar the 4th episode. Again, I just find the whole premise of this game slightly less interesting than the first game. Which is, the first game, I'm not asking them to make the first game again, but, you know, the plot's the big part of the game. The plot's good, it's a good game. For me, the first episode is only really comparable to some of the best moments in the first game for me. Despite this though, I think 3 and 5 are very solid Life is Strange episodes, and they have their moments, which kept me hooked. And I still enjoyed this game at the end of the day. I also respect this game for going very political. Obviously the first game was still relatively political as well, mainly about the LGBTQ plus community. Whereas this game is more focused on racial relations in the US. Which I should say again, which for the third time, commentary in this game is aged brilliantly, and it's still a great piece of social commentary on the state of, well, I just guess the world as a whole, particularly the West. And maybe increased racial tension in the last few years, particularly in 2024 as it's election year in America. Again though, the game's main failures were the main characters. As I said before, I'm not invested in their relationship as much as I was with Rachel and Chloe, but especially when compared to Chloe and Max. I don't dislike the brothers, just indifferent. Now, I do like the dynamics of them with other characters, such as Daniel with Finn in the 3rd episode, and also Sean with Cassidy in the 3rd episode. The decision to include their mother was also brilliant. Karen is a big highlight of this game. She might be my favourite character. But again, another failing of this game is a lot of it's just a bit forgettable. Sometimes a lot just doesn't happen. Like the 3rd episode, not much happens. It's still very enjoyable, but not much happens plot-wise compared to the 3rd episode of the first game, and the last episode as well. First half of it is just away from the story, I guess. But again, I feel like I should bring more praise up to probably the best part of this game, which is the original shock I felt in the first hour of the game when the inciting event happened. That is maybe a top 5 Life is Strange moment. I can't get over how it made me feel when it is the peak of this game, probably in my opinion. But you will know more about my thoughts of this game compared to the others though in the final part of the series, which will be after True Colours. Well, now that that's done, I'd like to thank all of those who have tuned in up to this point for part 3 of this series The script for this is pushing about 11,000 words, which I'm questioning how, as this game is not as entertaining for me when compared to the first one, but I suppose there are a lot of different endings, and maybe I was hating a bit. This 5th episode as well was nearly touching half an hour after speaking of that, which is quite impressive. Although, I'd like to thank you all for watching this Life is Strange 2 video, and make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I don't have much more to say than that in this outro, but I hope you look forward to the final part of this rankings of each individual game in this series when we tackle Life is Strange True Colors up next, the most recent entry into the franchise. I'll see you then though. Thank you for watching and bye.